Ashley, welcome. Welcome
Thank
to the
you.
conversation. It's really good to have you.
I
Um,
appreciate being here.
yeah. Thank you, everyone, for making the time to join as well. Ashley's a new guest to the conversation. She and I met a couple weekends ago. Some of what I'd mentioned a little bit on a workshop that she and I and several others had gone to, a karma release workshop, and she's kind enough to want to join the conversation. So, Ashley, can you? I like to say this when new guests come on. Um, how would you describe yourself? I have your bio, and I'll put that on in the conversation. But whatever you'd like to introduce yourself, where Ashley is today on, I think, the 28th of May. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So, how would I describe myself? I would say that I am a little mix of, spicy and sweet, a little mix of fire and water. I am someone that is very much into personal growth, deepening connections in relationships, and specifically with self, right? Because I think all relationships grow at the extent that you do, and you are responsible for, yourself, your growth, and that's how you show up in a relationship with other people.
Yeah.
So I would say that for me today, I would describe myself as someone who puts a high value on self discovery and being connected with self. I love participating in that journey with other people like yourself, Adam. We were both at a growth seminar together. And I just really am drawn to people who love to grow, expand, change, evolve, and then also people that are real, right? Like, just because I think a lot of times in the self growth world, we forget that we're also having a human experience and we are just as impacted by things that happen in day to day, and we're all human. So, not ever spiritually bypassing that,
Right.
but feeling the feelings all the way through, knowing that we're just human. And then sometimes we just get more tools where we can work through something at a little bit faster of a pace
Yeah.
than we may have at a previous version of ourselves. So I would say that I'm someone who loves to coach people in regards to relationship with self and others. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm also an entrepreneur, I'm a mom, and those two pieces of my life definitely cause a lot of growth and expansion for me.
Right.
Uh, I always say parenting is, for me, has been one of the greatest gifts, but it's also the hardest challenge I've ever really been given, because you can stay the same or you can take these beautiful people in your life and you really, I think it causes you to really grow
Yeah.
outside of here, right?
Yeah.
So,
I,
um,
I agree with that, and I like that you're describing the different sort of paths in your life, because there it
mhm.
really is one path. And if you're not careful, you can have all kinds of conflicts and all these other things, come up. But as I'm sure of you found too, spiritual bypassing, which I guess defined as a term of, you're on this lofty ivory tower and you're looking down at all these people, including your children, like, just wait till you get to where I am. Or you can choose what you're describing, where it's a human experience. Like, you're going to have to go through some muck to get, to the mountain, if you will. So all of those things, I think, can be integrated. It takes time. It's challenges. Not all of us have, children and entrepreneurship and other things going on. I talk about that quite a bit. So I love that you kind of went there. Um, there's does not need to be a separation between spiritual side and business side and mom side. Like, it can be all together. It's messy. It can be messy. So appreciate you framing that. Um,
I really quickly on that note,
yeah,
I think that the fun part about that is for so many years I compartmentalized, right? Like, here's this version of me and here's this version of me.
right.
Here's this version of me. And it was in 20, I believe 2022, when I did this leadership this 90-day leadership challenge, that basically one of the women in there, it was either Renee or Portia. They looked at me and they said, when are you just going to show up as you in all areas? Like,
Right.
stop trying to compartmentalize and make things harder than it needs to be.
Right.
Just compile it all into one, and you'll find a more settled sense of peace. And then from that point forward, it became like, okay, I don't have to like compartmentalize working out and spending time with my kids.
Right.
I can take my kids and make them go on a bike ride and we chat for an hour, or we can go on a 1 hour walk. So I'm getting workout and quality time. It's all about learning how to integrate all areas of life. And when we start to do that, I feel like it becomes so much more easy. Sometimes can it be messy? Absolutely. And that's life. Life is messy.
That's right. Well, and it can be harder if we really want to cling to, well, this is my persona when I'm talking with this person
Mhm.
or when I'm doing this, as opposed to the persona is who you think you should be, as opposed to just being. I mean, I have plenty of times at work now. I tend to fast fairly long, like a 5-day water fast, and that's really weird. I'll admit that's really weird. Not everyone, really wants to get down with that. But customers that I have, they absolutely know. And they can make fun of me for being weird. Or the beautiful thing is, someone will be like, I have tried that. It really, really works. That conversation wouldn't have happened unless I was, I don't want to say brave. I removed whatever persona I think I should be to the person. And I'm just
Mhm.
being me. Some will like it, some won't. And it's really not my business what they think of me. I know we all make it our business, too much. But that's great. That's great that you got called out, if you will, to that. Now, was it
Yeah.
hard when you initially had that? Were you like, "What do you mean?" Or were you ready to kind of embrace?
I was ready to embrace because I did this growth leadership program for the entire premise of like, okay, how can I now step up and challenge myself even more? Right? I'm all about learning new skill sets, integrating them, and then pushing the envelope. Like, okay, great. Now I've incorporated and settled in new skill sets, and how can I expand, grow, or discover more about who I am? So I was ready to embrace it. And it was very hard for me because for so long in my life, I had compartmentalized. And I think letting go, it's almost like you're letting go a sense of control and being like, okay, I'm just going to let it be. And
Right.
I actually, like, through that process, I now see how big of a difference it makes in my life because um, then I got my kids on board to like goal set with me in my career, which then gets them invested because now we've set a goal that, when I achieve X, we're going to celebrate with Y. And so it gives them a different sense of being incorporated
Part of
into
it. Yeah.
my success and my goals and teaches them how to set goals. So I think that it was honestly one of the best things I could have done for myself, but in the moment I would be lying if I said there wasn't some resistance.
Yeah.
But it made sense as I start to go through and start to collapse everything into one and being like, okay, stop compartmentalizing and just be.
Right.
Um, getting over the uncomfortable piece of that it was a me thing, right?
Yeah.
Like how can I be business Ashley and be mom Ashley and be, growth Ashley and workout Ashley? Like how do all those things work out together? And it honestly makes everything so much easier because I don't have to separate. I feel like it gave me more time if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I can definitely resonate with that. There's moments in my life where you don't realize that you kind of get immersed in like the worry or the concern or like the mental gymnastics of like trying to hold this. I keep saying persona. It's probably something different too. But and then when you let that go and you're like, well, now what? Well, now you get to live. But it
Yeah.
might feel almost like a little bit of a letdown or boring. You're like, well, what do I think about now? Anything you want, because the worries of what am I supposed to be when I walk into this particular room or with my children or whatever else, there's almost like an emptiness. It can get filled really quickly and it doesn't take long, but you need almost that kind of pause with it. It is, you'd mentioned about coaching. and helping people. Is that right around the same time that you started to do that? And kind of how did it evolve for you? I mean, as an entrepreneur, I think that's specifically in real estate, right? Or I guess you'd consider that
Yes.
across, but okay.
Yep.
Did you start coaching and helping people kind of organically from that? Was it already occurring? How did you?
So, coaching and helping people is something for me that I've been doing, I feel like my entire life, right? Like from the time I was, I think, 17, I was coaching kids in swim lessons, coaching swim team, coaching like adult fitness classes. So that was something that was always a part of me. And then when I got into real estate, I started out with a transaction coordination business. And in that arena, I slowly started coaching agents, not being paid for it, but just as a transaction coordinator, I became like a big cheerleader for all my agents, right? With ideas and helping them grow their business and expand their business and helping them problem solve. And so I've been doing that my entire career in real estate. And the coaching in self growth and relationships kind of started back in, I would say like 2019, 2017 is when I went to my first growth event, right? I hadn't really dabbled in self growth and I was invited to come to this seminar. I went to it, and that 3 days was completely life changing. Like, I learned so much about myself in those 3 days than I had in my entire life.
Yeah,
And and trust me, like I had done, I think at that point I had been in therapy for like 18 years, but that
right.
3 days was more impactful than my 18 years of therapy. And that's not saying that I don't think that therapy is useful. I definitely think that therapy has a time, a place, and an importance.
Yeah,
And what I was needing in my life was I was needing self discovery and a way out of my downward spiral cycle with all the traumas I had been dealing with. And this kind of exposed all of that, right?
yeah,
At that point in my life, I had built this, what I'm going to call a facade for myself. Like, I was successful in my career, I was married, I had 2 kids, I had a house, and inside I was struggling. And so this kind of gave me the pathway to get super super aware, and how I was showing up for other people, how I was showing up for family, how I was showing up in my household. And it was that awareness that kind of made me go inside and go, okay, what do I want that I don't cultivate right now?
right.
And it all comes back to myself, right?
It does.
So kind of 2019, 2020, my life kind of exploded. Um, and through a series of events, I started doing a lot of investment in self because my entire life was just completely flipped on its head. And I'm going like, okay, like now's the time to go inward. And I started doing so much self discovery, and healing work and self growth work to really discover who I was as a woman. As I'm sure, sometimes there's periods in our life where I feel like we lose touch with who we are, depending, it can happen at many different points in our life. But at that point, I had felt like I was like, I don't even know who I am. I know I'm a business person. I was a wife. I am a mom.
Right.
But like, who am I? Like, I could not tell you anything about myself at that point. And so that self growth journey opened up a lot of self discovery and healing for me. And that path kind of led me to say, okay, everything that's happening over here, where I was in it, it was dark, it was messy, it was explosive, it was something where I was like, how am I going to make it through this? I hit my lowest of lows multiple times. But then when I started to get on the other side of it, I just started to see like, okay, all these coaching programs I've gone through, the skill sets, the certifications, I was not doing those with the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to coach people later. No, I was doing all of those things for
For
me
you.
so
Yeah.
I could heal and I could grow and I could expand and I could discover. But then I got on the other side of it and I was like, I can use all of this for better. and for
Yeah.
good. All of this didn't have to be for nothing. It gives me a way deeper level of empathy and understanding. And because of where I know I was, I feel like I can help pull people through the other side,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I show up in a way now where like I do my best to shine my light. I do my best to be positive, to raise a room by one. And to me, it's because I have this extreme gratitude for like each and every day is a gift. I'm glad to be breathing today. Do I have my downward spiral days still? Absolutely. I am human. And my kids will tell you that I am definitely have those moments, right? But I also really try to bounce back fast from that, knowing that like in the grand scheme of things, things are so not needed to spiral down for a long period of time
Right.
because it's life is so short and so finite. So when I started going through all that healing journey, I was like, okay, I'm going to start using this to help other people. And it kind of just started like doing pro bono work, working with other people. And then from there, it was like word of mouth. And I started working with people like more long term. And then, so now it's been about 5 years that I've been coaching, and it's all been word of mouth and working with individuals, whether it's in personal growth or whether it's in relationships or career. And it has been the biggest blessing because I think being in partnership on someone's journey, like first and foremost, what a blessing that they trust me to walk alongside them,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
me, that's a huge gift for me. And then also watching people grow and expand, that's something that genuinely brings so much joy to my life. So
I,
it's been.
no, I appreciate that. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you to be talking with people that are maybe at, whatever their ground zero is, if you will, and knowing where you feel like you could help them if they choose to for themselves. Um, I can acknowledge that I do talk with some people pro bono, and some can be at work, can be wherever else. We don't really call it, that, but several have come that way, and I can respect that you where you are now when you're talking with someone who has some headway to make for themselves. You got to have a lot of patience, I would imagine, because your answers you could give them all right then, but they're not necessarily ready for that. They have lots of things to work on. So, what's your mindset when you talk with someone who's starting new for whatever that ground zero is? How do you take sort of bite-sized chunks for them to see that progress? Um,
So
is it a
for
one?
my
I guess what I was going to say is, there's a one size fits all for. All right, here's what you do, and here's what you do. If you're certified in things, do you start it that way, or do you kind of meet where they're at? I'm just curious.
So I mean I do have a coaching process, right? And I'm just starting to create group coaching so there can be, that expansive share. I think there's something to be said about people that are coaching together. We can all learn from each other. So
Yeah,
I'm starting that. However, when I do the one-on-one coaching, I do have a process. We do a breakthrough session in whatever area of life they're wanting to focus, and that's like really getting down to stuff that is created when we're 0 to 8, right? I always think it blows people's minds when we're talking about like your view of the world, what you think about money, what you think about relationships, what you think about, men and women and you name it. The majority of that was created by the time you were 0 to 8. I think
right.
it's about 85% of your lens of the world was created by the time you're 8. So I always joke with my clients, like, yeah, we're out here as adults running around like a little psycho 8-year-old making decisions and like
Right.
engaging in a relationship. And the fact is a lot of what we learned from our parents, our grandparents, our environment, school, like all of that impacted us. By the time we're 8, we've already kind of settled on what does life look like. So I work with my clients on let's do some discovery on what those beliefs are, right? So we can get empowered to change our lens. And so that's where I love to do deep level work with people. And then when we go on our coaching journey, it's really interesting because when I set it up for clients, I'm like, listen, I'm never going to give you homework that you haven't said that you want to do for yourself. So
Right.
like during the call, I'm listening to them on what needs to get accomplished, and they'll tell you what they need to do. Like I don't have to tell them anything.
Right.
I just am there to hold them accountable. So, but it is interesting, right? Because I always have to check my own self, like make sure that it's not my lens that's distorting what I'm hearing. So there's a lot of like, hey, this is what I'm hearing. Is this what you're conveying? Giving them the power to get clear on what is it that you're articulating
Yeah.
and what is it that you're wanting to grow and change. And where do you see in this? Is it a responsibility thing? Is it a boundary thing? Is this a lack of communication? So I love to give them different exposure to skill sets of things that I've learned that I'm like, yeah, if I would have known this in my 20s, who knows, right? Communication, basic communication skills. Like, are you a direct or an indirect speaker? Are you a
Right.
direct or an indirect listener? Like, I didn't know what that was until I was in my 30s, but I can dang tell you that if I would have known that, it would have helped a lot in my relationship if I was clear on what those things were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's is there a certain theme that you've noticed with people that you've coached that when you ask them that question about, okay, well, what would you like to focus on? Is it really across the board? Do you start with a focus on self for them?
I'm always going to focus on self first because so many times what I it's interesting, right? Because I've been in the growth land for so long, like I get to meet people like yourself and we've been immersed in this, so we tend to take everything on as like, oh, we're responsible, right?
Right.
For what and the fact is like we're not always responsible for what's happening out here. Do we have responsibility in what we're creating in our life? Absolutely. But like, do I have to take responsibility for X, Y, and Z's feelings? No.
Right.
No, I get to take responsibility for my reactions, my feelings. So I think that the one of the big things when I'm working with people is like getting them into a space of communication is like by far number one, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's communication with self or others, communication across the board. Like I almost find it comical that it's what separates, I think, us as human beings, the way that we can communicate and use our words. Yet, our society and life has created a space where I feel like it's harder to communicate these days than it used to be,
Yeah.
right? Because we really have to leave our ego at the door
Right.
and learn how to like not take things personally and let's work through something. If you're feeling a certain way, let's own our own feelings. No one can make your feelings. You make your feelings.
Right.
And what could happen differently to cause your feelings to be different? So I think communication is number one, and like self-regulation, like teaching people to go like, okay, I'm going to leave my ego at the door. I'm not, if I feel like I'm taking something personal, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to pause. There
Right.
is power in the pause, right? And instead of reacting, let me pause and think about, okay, instead of assuming the worst that you're saying this to make me feel a certain way, why don't I ask you,
Yeah.
hey, what was your intention? Because I'm feeling this way and I just want to check in with you. Is that what is being communicated? Is that what's being understood? So communication is always the thing I spend the most amount of time on. And then the second thing I would say would be boundaries. We
Mm.
are a society where boundaries are like the hardest thing.
Right.
We don't like to hold boundaries. We don't like to set boundaries. And other people certainly don't like when we set boundaries when we haven't set boundaries with them previously, right? Because they're used to being able to talk to us or treat us or act a certain way. And when we come and be like, that's no longer acceptable, they're like, but wait a second. Why? Like
Yeah.
this is how, this is how our relationship's been for decades. So I think boundaries and learning how to communicate those in a way that's effective, not from a place of combative, but a place of compassion.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful the way you described it, and I think in communication and with boundaries, even when you're communicating, I mean, you could say, you or I could say something as crisp as you'd like to, and if I have found, if I'm attached to what I want the result to be,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't come back, well, then I'm like, why? There's a tendency then to not want to communicate. Well, I might as well not even say anything anyhow, because what's it going to matter? But that act of communicating and being, and it's an overly used word to say authentic or to be real, but when you're expressing emotions or feelings, even to say, hey, Ashley and I are going to do a podcast today, and gosh, I feel a little awkward about it. I'm not sure why. What am I going to ask? Which is like a normal thing, like when I get on a podcast. So that's not abnormal. But then me just expressing it here, it sort of takes the air out of like any pressure or whatever else. Like it's just going to be what it's going to be. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's hard when you're trying to protect yourself and communicate only to feel better about whatever the other person, how will they take it? How will they not? I think you mentioned a little earlier, it's not our business how other people take who we are.
Yes.
It's not gonna cause us to fail in business, and it also won't cause us to succeed. You're just being wherever you are in the place you are. And I think that might be a hard thing for people to embrace, I would think.
So, one of my favorite things that I tell people is that when it comes to who we are, right, we can be as congruent, authentic, real with ourselves and other people, show up the same. And the fact is when we can accept that we are going to be somebody's hero and somebody's villain,
Right.
it makes life so much easier, right? Because I would say, I mean, I don't know how many of your listeners or how many of us out there, like, I think it's a very common thing that we want approval, we want people to like us. Even those of us that are like, you get what you get with me, like unapologetically, I'm always going to be myself, but do I still prefer being liked over disliked? Of course. I think that's a natural human want to be accepted, right? And it goes
Right.
to a very basic tribal, that piece of your brain that's the reptilian brain of where it's like fight or flight. Like we are built to be in community for safety. So we automatically default to that idea of like, I want to be accepted. However, as I've grown in my life, I now look at things and I go, there are plenty of people in my life that have come into my life in a way where I'm like, that was a hard lesson, right? Hard
Right.
lesson learned. Definitely prefer to not have that person in my life again. But that person could be loved, adored, and cherished by many other people.
Right.
And it's the same for me, right? There are plenty of people that are in my circle and in my life that I'm sure they would say amazing things about me. And then you have some people that have crossed paths with me that I'm sure would not prefer me, right?
Right.
And although I would love to come over here and convince these people and teach them, like, no, like, look at who
Look
I
at me,
am,
I'm so good. How could you feel that way?
right? Like, no, I swear I'm not like that. Okay, great. But the fact is like, I had to play a different version in somebody else's story in their journey, right? I was somebody's lesson. I was somebody's learning. I was somebody's villain. And as much as I don't want that, it's just the fact. It's all balance. I believe that life in general and the universe, it is the law of opposites, right? Everything's going to balance itself out. So you can't always have the hero. You got to be balanced out with the villain sometimes. And that's the piece in life where when you can just like surrender to that, does that mean I'm going out there being a tyrant? Absolutely not. Like that's not my
Right.
intention in life, is to bring, negativity into anybody's life. And at the end of the day, it's like it's all about balance in life.
Yeah.
So having that grace for self and others, going like, okay, it's just a lesson, it's just a learning, it's just the universe balancing it out. I think that's where it's been the biggest impact for me, and it's been the biggest impact in like when I'm communicating to clients.
The how that initial focus that you have kind of on those themes and self-discovery, is that a large chunk of the first like interactions that you typically will have with people, do you think?
Um,
Do
just
you,
in
well,
everyday life or with clients?
no, with clients, where I'm going with this is, say I'm your client and I have this specific thing that I need to focus on. I'll pick work. Gosh, work is awful, and there's just so many things that need to be improved. And I might not be right every time, but gosh, I really feel like a lot of these things, if they just listen to me, that they just listen, and you would help me course correct to focus on myself. How long do you how long do you typically spend on that before then you look outward? Because I'll explain a little more about this. For me, where I'm at right now, so much of it is internal that I think almost all of it is internal. So I wonder when you kind of shift to then looking outward, because if I'm being a little biased probably, because I feel like everything is internal. Once you shift internal, everything else flows the way it's supposed to. So I'm wondering if someone brings a problem to you and you have them focus on self, does that kind of course correct while you're having that conversation? Do you stay in the self almost most of the time? Does that make sense? What I'm
I
asking?
do. I would say I stay in the self a lot of the time, unless it's a boundary, right? Like if
Ah, yes, that's true. That's
and
true.
then if it's a boundary, then it's not you. It's outside of you, and it's still you because you're still the one that has to communicate the boundary, hold the boundary, follow through with the boundary. So it still comes back to self, but it's like, okay, is this a boundary issue or is this your, complaining about
Right.
not being right, right? Are you standing from a place of righteousness because in 2017, the facilitator that did my basic seminar through PSI stood in front of me, like I could touch him on the face, and he said something to me that impacted me for the rest of my life, like to this day. He
Wow.
stood in front of me and he goes, Ashley, there are times in life where you can be right or you can be in relationship. You have to choose.
Right.
Like, even at right now, I have goosebumps because that one statement has impacted my life in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, when we're in a space of work, like sometimes you could choose to be right or you can choose to be in relationship. It's your choice.
Yep.
But
There.
sometimes those can't coexist, right? Whether it's work, whether it's in a romantic relationship, whether it's, with my arguing with my kids, like there are times I know that I'm right. I'm an adult. I know.
Right.
But like there's times where I just have to back off and go like, okay, am I going to choose to die on this hill or am I going to choose to be in relationship and like open up communication lines right now?
Yeah.
And a lot of that, um, it's work in progress, right? Like sometimes we just want to be right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a significant letting go of control and being right, especially if especially if you think in your mind, I am dead to rights, I know this. And when I find myself in those times, which they still occur, I'm like, what am I going to gain
Yes.
by this win, aside from some imaginary merit badge that I can pin on myself because no one else is going to want to.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what exactly does it? Yeah, it's choice was the word I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprisingly, just before you said it, because when you're thinking of boundaries and you're thinking of whether it's work, relationships, or anything, um, you have choices to make. And I will raise my hand to be very uncomfortable at times with choices. It's almost shocking to me how uncomfortable it is internally. You might not see it on the outside, although I don't have a great poker face, so maybe so. Um, I'll give you an example, and I'd like you to help me unpack it a little bit. Um, so, you and I went to this, workshop,
Yeah.
I guess now a month and a half ago or so. Time flies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, there were three really huge, what I'll call blocks for me. Um, I want to be valued. I want to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
You already kind of nailed that one, which on a certain respect, probably most people do, but I seem to have a very, very large
Attachment.
desire for that. Yes,
Yeah.
attachment. Thank you. And then also, I don't want to be, I don't like liars. And as I peeled under some of those, layers, the liar one I'll zone in on. Maybe a couple days after you and I got back, first couple days were great. The reintegration to the real world, everything was, I was still on a consciousness high, if you will. And then like maybe the Wednesday afterwards, there were like three like back to back work things where like I was really struggling, like not in a good place. I'm like, I made so much progress. What's happening? After the workday concluded, I took myself for a drive and had a conversation of the reason why you don't like liars is not really because about them. They're being who they are. A cat is a cat. You can't have them be a dog if you wanted to. You are mad because you are now associated with this lie, if you want to call it that way. I think it was a little dramatic for me to say that. You're just associated with it. Well, then you have a choice. You can stay or you can leave. And once I had that conversation with myself, I could feel all of the reptilian brain stress, whatever, kind of drift out, because then I was holding myself accountable to be like, just decide what you want. And either way will be fine. You
Either
just
way, you're
need,
going to be safe.
right. You just need to own it. And that's really hard for us humans. Really wanting to do that, not have to be right, not you win. And also in 6 months from now, if the lie is exposed or the change happens, I can't stand up and be like, I was right 6 months and 3 days ago, and I was really mad about it that you didn't think about it. Now it changed. None of that really matters, because that would mean that I'm attached then to something
Yes.
with it, as opposed to just letting it be. Um, Letting it be, although it can be really peaceful. Like I said, I think there's us as humans have attachments to that want to be right, or the want to control, the want to just feel validated. When in reality, we should be the only validation that we need for ourselves.
So that's I love that topic of validation, right? So many times I feel like we I don't even feel like it's necessarily the we have to be right all the time more than we want to be validated and heard.
Yeah.
So that is like one of the biggest things for me, whether it's personal or whether it's in coaching. It's like sometimes, and I tend to, my exposure tends to think that women tend to talk more to get the validation than men, but men also want to be validated. I just think in my experience, men downplay it, and you could call me out if I'm wrong. Like they tend to be like, women will just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, like, please validate me, please tell me, like, you hear me. There are some times where I've been in communication with other people and I'm talking and talking and talking, and then I have to go like, okay, Ashley, like, just tell them what you need in this
Right.
moment, right? Like, hey, I'm not looking for you to say that whatever is right, or it's not a right wrong thing. I just want you to tell me, like, you hear my perspective, and then I'm over it. And
Right.
then when we communicate, this is what I'm needing right now, like, it can end things so much faster and easier,
Right.
right? But we tend to not express what we're needing and wanting. Whereas I feel that in my experience with men, they tend to want the validation, and it's communicated way more subtly.
Yep. I would agree with
And and men won't just come and be like, this is what I need, or this is my feeling.
that. Right.
It's like, it's more, I feel like it's more of like a indirect and almost like a, the best example I can give is like, I was coaching with a client once, and we were coaching in the area of relationship, and he was describing a scenario to me, and he's like, when my wife does this, I feel like I'm not valued.
Right.
And I said, and it was something in from a third party that I was like, that's such a small thing for her to validate. And I said, have you ever communicated that to her? No. What am I supposed to say?
That would be embarrassing to actually admit that.
I'm like, if it's something this small, right? Let's just use an example of like, when I walk in the door, I just want her to come over and give me a hug and a kiss
Right.
so I can feel valued and important, but she just stays over here on the couch and it makes me feel X. I go, have you ever communicated that to her?
Right. Right.
No. Okay. Well, I'm going to challenge you this week to communicate that to her from a space of love, right? So
Yep.
you can have your cup full, because so many times we assume that the receiver, the other person, knows exactly what we're thinking or what we need, when in fact, if we can just over communicate, like, this is what I need from you.
Right.
Most people in partnerships, like, they want the other person to feel good, right?
They do. They do.
Yeah.
Well, this makes me think of, and my wife and I communicate a lot. I will say that I am probably, from my experience, I am abnormal for most men, where I like talk things into the ground and then we dig it back up and we talk about it again and then we bury it again. Getting better. My wife is better at just being right to the point. Um, so we've landed in a pretty blended place, which I think is good. But
That's great.
the example that you bring up, it's taken me a little bit of time to get there, where she needs time to kind of think through things, talk them out, whatever else. But I want to like execute right at the moment. And I have
Yeah.
learned over time, now that I understand her way, my way isn't necessarily so wonderful. Like, it's okay to pause for maybe even a day or longer when it's something that's a bigger topic. And I also don't have a fear any longer, or at least it's much less, of like, oh, but she doesn't want to talk about it right now, and she'll come to talk to me when she's ready. Well, I had a fear of not feeling validated, and now
Mm.
just in the last couple of weeks, which I do not think it's non-coincidental timing about the karma release workshop, um, where I said something like, we had some exchange, and I said, I knew I wanted to actually hug and a kiss too. So maybe your client and me are a little similar. But anyway, she had to walk out the door and go do something, and I let it go. I didn't say anything.
Mhm.
And when we came back and we talked about it, I just, I don't remember if she thanked me or I did, but basically I acknowledged, I was like, I knew you just needed your space, and that, yeah, I wanted to like have an exchange before you left, but like, I knew everything was good. Like, I was safe and whatever. She's like, thank you for finally getting that. Like, thank you because in reality, she'd been telling me all along, for 5 years we've been together.
Yeah.
So she's probably like, thank you for finally listening. Um,
Yeah.
because really I might have been listening, but it was only felt like half listening, because I really wasn't getting it, because I was still letting my need, if you
Agenda.
will, override. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have our agenda. We're always going to protect it.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Um, I love that. I love that example. I love that growth. And I love that reminder that being able to communicate and figure out a win for both parties, right? Um, Even if that looks like a blend, right? Like, maybe there's a couple things that you just want to say and you go, hey, you don't have to talk about it. These are just a couple things I want to throw out there while they're on my brain. So the hamster wheel isn't just turning and turning and turning,
right.
right? So I think there's always ways to come up with compromise, because there's a lot of times where opposite communicators do attract each other, right? The people that want to just like, I want to solve all the world's problems right now, don't move. And then there's the people that are like, I need time to digest and think about what I want to say. So I'm not just like,
That's
you
right.
know, not emptying out. Some of us process faster our emotions. I tend to be that way. I'm like, if something bubbles up for me, I'm like, it's like logorrhea, right? Diarrhea of the mouth. I am just like, I'm going to tell you everything I'm feeling right this second.
That's right.
And sometimes it can feel overwhelming for a receiver, because they're like, holy cow, like, I'm still thinking about how I feel about what just happened. And
Right.
you're spewing everything out.
Well, and being that far, and if one person's that far ahead in like processing it, which is not a dismissal of the other person,
No.
they just think differently. And then the other person who is not ready to communicate yet is being forced into a conversation. And then later, like, doing something else random, and they're like, I just thought of a really good argument that I could have said, but I didn't have the time because I was backed into a corner the reason why winning and losing, I don't feel like really matters, is you're not giving each person their time to like figure it out within reason, right? You can't be like, I'll talk to you next year. Some within reason about that. This kind of brings me to a question I want to ask you. And again, this is where my head's at. What you and I have just come through, the Michael Singer books that we. I don't know if you've read them, but I've
Yep.
now on my third one reading it. And the idea of, and I've even started doing a couple solo podcasts, like not having a guest and just sort of getting on and riffing, which has been awkwardly uncomfortable, and I've loved every moment of it because that's not me. So I
I
kind of
love
like being
that.
free.
Push the boundaries.
The the idea that we are not the idea, the strong fact that we are not our thoughts because we can identify them. They're an object. And just the pause of saying, okay, I'm aware that I feel frustrated, and I'm aware that I feel angry, or I'm aware that I feel joy. All those things sound really therapy like, but it's to give a break point between here's this persona or these thoughts that are going to come up and they're going to be random all the time. And then there's my higher self behind that. And in between is this little bit of a sag, right, of emptiness. You have to let go to pull into higher self. Do you talk about that much with your clients? Do you spend time when you're looking internally about them not, that we are not our thoughts, that they're going to randomly pop up based on our 0 to 8 or based on some relationship before that we're pulling into this? Do you spend much time on that?
I spend a lot of time on that. That's a lot. So I'm trained in NLP, and I also,
What is
I,
NLP for any? I don't
it's
know it.
yes, neuro linguistic programming.
Okay.
So it basically talks about how your brain is wired and how those pathways are created 0 to 8, right? And so the whole premise behind NLP, like it's heavily leans on like biology of belief, how your body reacts to things, storing information, how your body processes events, right? And then it
Yeah.
either distorts, deletes, generalizes, files away, and then you behave a certain way, and all that happens in light speed. So, but yes, I do a lot of foundation laying on that exact topic, because the fact is like anytime we're feeling, reacting, or behaving a certain way, your unconscious mind is running its programs, right? What do I know? It's
Yeah.
always going to default to what's familiar. It's always going to, number one, keep you safe. So anything outside of your norm is going to feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and it's going to pull you back to the lowest common denominator,
Uh,
right?
this just
So
keep going, but this just gave me a breakthrough. I'll tell you about it in a moment. Go
yes. So it's the whole thing of like we have to understand how our mind works in order to push ourselves to a different normal. And so often that comes with system regulation, because when I'm, coaching clients and they're like, let's say somebody's not taking action on something that they're saying they want to take action on, right? I pause as a coach and I go, let's talk about why you're not taking action.
Yeah.
And I already know from my own self and all of the studies that I've done and the coaching that I partake in, when we're not taking action on something that we say we want, it is because our current identity is not in alignment with what that goal is or what we're
Right.
saying we want. Our brain goes, that's not for you. So it's going to pull you back. It's going to sabotage you, sedate you, or whatever it needs to do to be like, nope, we're not going to take that action today. It's very uncomfortable. And no, that's not safe.
Right.
And logically, we may go like, it could be something so small, right? Like, I'll give you a example for myself. When I was starting to build my coaching stuff, my coach was like, you need to be posting on social media.
Right.
And I'm like, necessary evil. We don't have to get into the social media
Right.
conversation. But when you're in sales or you're in personal growth, or this entity over here, social media, it's such a big part of our society.
Right.
Whether I personally like it or not, that's irrelevant.
Right.
But
You're right.
there was, I would post for like 7-8 days, and then I would just drop off the face of the earth, and that tends to be a pattern of mine.
Right.
And then I had to go, what feels unsafe for me? doing this? And when I really dug down, it's like, well, the more I'm out there, the more judgment that can be had, the more I feel exposed, the more I feel like I can say I don't care what people think about me, but then they're seeing these videos. Like, am I saying something? I don't want to just be on there talking to talk, right? Like, I
Right.
want to be on there conveying something that's going to help, even if it's just one person. My motivation is to help one person, even if it's like an encouragement for the day or something they needed to hear. And then I get in my own head. So then my unconscious mind is like,
Right.
this isn't safe. You're now putting yourself out there. And so I had to do a lot of work around that.
Yeah. Well, all the things you said are kind of lead up to your you're providing exposure to yourself to either succeed or fail, and either of them will be
Yes.
what will happen. I mean, same thing with with our conversations here and anything that I may do on social media. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to make the choice to be like, I'm okay. I'm okay regardless of what happens, and I have to be that way. So it's huge that that you mentioned that. And I know we're almost close on time. I just want to be mindful for you. Um,
Okay, tell me
the
about your little aha that you had.
Well, so the aha was when you mentioned it's NLP, right? Is that the okay?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were talking about kind of, I'm not sure how you framed it, but something about you have these patterns that you sort of automatically go to,
Mm-hmm.
and as you're talking, I'm thinking, I wonder if that's why I have an immediate desire to want to talk and like execute it. Is it because I can come up with ideas pretty fast? I have these automatic things. I just go to the well and I pull it out and I talk to it. And it's not always factual, but boy, it sounds like I know what boy, it sounds like it's factual. And my wife is incredibly great at this for me, which has been frustrating for me, but also beautiful at the same time. And
Yeah.
I will express more gratitude for her that, and she's going to be like, I told you. Should be good about it. But the reason why I say that is because I've started to notice examples, and I'm sure they've been happening all of my life, but more so now I can see it, where I'll say something and I'll state it as fact of like a memory, and then I'll think back to it, or I'll get or specifically her, she'll ask me, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen that way, and it wasn't like I missed big pieces to like of like I'm not fictionalizing it, but there's pieces where I'm like, oh yeah, that didn't really happen that way, but it really suited my argument when I made it and explained it. So I just glossed over that thing. So that was the light bulb for me of that's why me taking more time, even if it feels incredibly uncomfortable, is really good because I might not have all the facts I think I do. And I want to be proud that I have everything just right at the ready, but
Mm.
that's not really going to serve anything. It's not going to win anything either, other than a merit badge for yourself, which really doesn't exist. So that was the aha that I had of like, that's why maybe that's not the only reason why. There, I almost did it again. I know the reason why I'm the only reason why. No, but the immediate reactions, I think, are automatic from however I felt that I needed to feel safe, either growing up or earlier on
That's
in
it.
my life.
So
That's
that's what I
makes
was going to say
go ahead.
is your brain, right? When you're in a situation, whether it's conversation, confrontation, or like problem solving, you could chunk that way back to when you were little and we could figure out the exact moment where you decided that this process kept you safe,
Right.
right? Or protected you in some way. And so it was just a learned behavior. And what happens, not to get too scientific, but in your brain, whatever the behavior is that you do, which is like, oh, I collect these stories and I tell them in a way that suits my argument to,
Right.
basically create the peace and stop the argument. You could go back and your brain creates what is called a gestalt, which is like um, all these different examples. I mean, your reticular activator, your RAS.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I know that this is a stored memory. So I'm going to distort, generalize, or delete things to
Yeah.
serve this example and continue to make it strong, which
Right.
is what your brain does for everything: anger, sadness, guilt, happiness, fear, celebration, relationships. It creates these filed memories. Then when something's happening outside of you, which this is always fascinating to me, right? We could be in the same room and have a totally different experience, even though we're in the same exact room.
Right.
But your filters are going to take in and distort, delete, and generalize. And my filters are going to take in, distort, delete, generalize. And then it's going to file it away where appropriate, which is another great reason why when you're talking about like, oh yeah, I'm saying these things and it didn't exactly happen that way. Well, your brain probably just distorted it to go
Right.
like, this is what fits my narrative. This is what
Right.
fits my belief, what keeps me safe, and this is how we experienced it. And it files it away. And that's why perception is projection, right?
Right.
Like whatever we're experiencing outside of us, we're filtering it through what serves us,
That's
not
right.
necessarily. It's not about truth, right? Everybody's going to have their own version of truth because they're filtering it through their own lenses.
Yeah.
So it's one of my favorite topics. I actually talked to my kids about this, and when they were little, and my daughter came home from school. I will share this one example because it's one of my favorite things. But she came home from school and she was telling me a story about something that was happening with her friends. And she's like, how do I know who's telling the truth? That's what her question to me was. And I said, well, is it possible that they're both telling the truth? And she just kind of looked at me because, right, where we teach our kids
Right.
right,
There's
wrong,
only one
black,
universal
white.
truth, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, is it possible they're both telling the truth? She kind of looked at me and I said, let me give you an example. I took my kids during COVID to the Grand Canyon. We go to this overlook, and my kids, I don't remember how old they are. They were pretty little. There's a squirrel that came up. Okay. And this squirrel was like very friendly. It was like perched up on their legs, their feet, hand feeding it Cheetos. Like, okay, there's probably gonna be judgment about me as a mom letting my kids hand feed Cheetos to a rabid squirrel, but they're feeding Cheetos to the squirrel. They're talking to it. They're giving it water. They're taking pictures of it. They're having a great time. In my peripheral, not far from us, probably 7 feet, I watched this kid in his 20s go over the railing, jump to a rock so he could take a selfie. Grand Canyon.
Wow.
I'm paying attention to this because thousands of people die at the Grand Canyon a year, probably for doing
Just like that.
just like this. I kind of turned to look because then he starts to panic and he's like, oh my God, how am I going to get back to the railing? Because jumping over the railing, he had oomph from the railing to like push him for
Right.
momentum. Coming back, he didn't have that. And it was a pretty big gap. So I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't want my kids to witness somebody dying. Like, obviously, worst case scenario, but I started panicking as a mom. And I'm like, oh my God. So I get my kids and I shoo them away, right? I'm like, okay, let's keep moving. Like, let's go look for other squirrels. And I take them walking. I saw one of the park rangers. I'm like, hey, there's a kid that jumped over on a rock. Like, you guys may want to go over there. I keep walking with my kids. So I'm telling Emma and I go, hey, remember the time we were at the Grand Canyon? She's like, yeah. I'm like, tell me what your experience was. So she starts talking about the squirrel that they named and they're feeding it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool. I'm like, you want to know what my experience was? And she's like, what? And I was like, I was panicked because I thought this kid was going to die because he was so far away. He couldn't jump back and straight down. Like he's
Right.
going far. Like there is no surviving that.
Right.
And she was like, what? That happened? I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yep.
And she's like, I didn't see that. I'm like, well, yeah, because you were focused on this squirrel and interacting and feeding it. I said, so who's telling the truth? And she looked at me and it's like a light bulb went off, right? Like, oh, we're both having our own experiences. It's not a right, wrong. It's not a truth. We're just observing different things.
That's right. This is a this is a beautiful place to conclude too, because as you've described, each of us, you and I and everyone watching, have these different packets of information, and they
Mhm.
are fed by whatever our experiences are, where we're at today, how we grew up, all things. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know the number, but it's a big number of all the different pieces of that. And our experience is that 0.000 whatever, 1% that we're looking through, which is another reason of saying we aren't our thoughts, and our perspectives only matter as far as us, not even the tip of our nose, and the other person's perspectives there. And
Yeah.
communication, the other things you've talked about are huge. Thank you very much, Ashley, for this. Hey,
Yeah.
take us home. Anything else, like parting comments that you'd like to make? I'll put up your website and also your bio a little bit when I post this out. But take us home. What message do you want to leave us with?
I just want to remind people, life is short. Embrace who you are, discover who you are, and go out there and shine your light, because we are in a very interesting place in life where I feel like you know, life is all about light and dark. So let's just embrace it, and let's come into a room and lift it by one. Try to do your best to communicate with people, to share your love with people, and to positively impact the world so we can continue to get the balance going. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you for joining, and thank you everyone for joining as well. We'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.